3 on cam?
Yes, it's lit up.
It's not working.
Maybe I have it muted. Right.
Check.
Oh, there we go. It's first day with a microphone?
Yeah.
So we may be small, but we're mighty.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you guys for coming on such short notice. So exciting. So I hear congratulations are in order. You just got hitched.
Thank you. I did.
Congratulations. So, how's married life this time around?
This time around, way better than the first time around.
It's wonderful. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you. Yeah,
It's beautiful.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning, fellas. I would love to know about your musical journey. How did you get involved in music in general? Like, what was your evolution?
We both kind of have the same thing going on. We are the youngest out of our families. We had older brothers and sisters. We got older brothers. Yeah, and it's just like music was always in the house at all times, and that's kind of what started it for me. And then when I saw Gene Simmons, I was like, I want to play what he plays. I didn't even know what the fuck a bass was, but I was just like, I want to play what he plays. And I showed it to my parents, spit blood, breathing fire. They're like, really? And I'm like, yep. So that was mine. That's what got me into music.
I had the same thing. Music was constantly being played in our house, and there's like a 20-year age gap between myself and my oldest brother, and so there was such a wide variety of music being played. Everything from Elvis Presley to the Beach Boys to Motown to Black Sabbath, you know, like early Zeppelin, and even stuff like, and I just started thinking about this recently, and even stuff on TV, like the Hee Haw would be on, and you'd see like Glenn Campbell and Roy Clark, and there's such amazing guitar players, and so there was no such thing as like this separation of genres of music. It was just great music all over my house, and so that kind of formed this dialogue within my own head, without me even knowing that this was something that I was going to do. And we had the same experience with Kiss. You know, we didn't know each other when we were growing up, but we both experienced Kiss on the same tour within a week of each other. Me at Madison Square Garden and him at the Spectrum in Philadelphia.
And Scotty in Nassau Coliseum.
Scotty in Nassau
all
Coliseum.
the same week. All the same week.
And so that was when that concert, when I got out of that concert, my life did a complete 180. Everything changed, and for him too. And so you know, it's sort of serendipitous that 10 years after that, or maybe actually 8 years after that, 7 years, we end up meeting in the music store and becoming quick friends, and 36, 37 years later, we hate each other more than ever.
Serendipitous, that's a big word for a guitar player.
I don't even know what it means.
So who were your biggest musical influences when you were developing your style?
Me personally, it was Gene Simmons, Dennis Dunaway from the Alice Cooper Band, all the early stuff, Paul McCartney, of course, and Roger Glover from Deep Purple. And these are all bass player influences. Graham Maybe from the Joe Jackson Band. I know I'm missing some, but those were my main influences as far as bass. As far as songwriting, man, it goes on forever. All those guys, plus like bands like the Cars and a lot of pop. Like I said, everyone. My brother listened to like Hendrix and Chicago and the Doors. My oldest sister Lorraine listened to everything British, from the Beatles to Herman's Hermits, and my sister closest in age listened to Joanne. She listened to like 10 Years After, and Melanie and James Taylor and Carly Simon, all kinds of Americana, folky type stuff. So I had all these influences, songwriting wise, coming in, and at the time, and I didn't even know it. You know what I mean? But it's funny when I hear songs that Snake and I write, every now and then I'll listen, I was like, wow, that's the same arrangement as that Car song, or that same arrangement as the Squeeze, you know what I mean? So, stuff like that.
I was, again, before I even picked up the guitar, being influenced by all those artists that I listen to every day. Again, not knowing how that would manifest itself through our own music. And that was one of the great things about when we met and we started talking about our influences. While we had a lot of overlapping influences that we shared, there was stuff that he was into that I wasn't really familiar with, and so I would
Vice versa. Yeah.
and so, but for me, it was, as far as guitar players, it was guys like Ace Frehley, of course, from Kiss, and Joe Perry, and Eddie Van Halen, and Randy Rhoads had a big influence on me. And then a lot of the two-guitar heavy metal bands like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and Thin Lizzy and Aerosmith was a big thing. And then that's where a lot of the songwriting stuff came from too for me, from not just from a solo guitar player type of thing, but the interaction of two guitars and stuff like that. And I always played in two guitar bands, and it was really important to me. I thought that it just added depth and texture to songs. And then when Rachel and I met, and we sort of got to know each other, we found that all these different things that were in common and weren't in common actually really helped us to come together as songwriters, because we learned early on, like, oh crap, Rachel does that really good, he does it better than me, and so that's gonna work really well, and we just found each other's strengths and weaknesses, and we're able to, I think, make each other better. And there was, and I think that there was like this silent, healthy competition too with us, where we just wanted to, who could come up with the best idea, and then when we got there, it didn't matter who came up with it. That was a really cool part, because we knew that we were creating something together that without the other guy would not have been created, and that's really, really cool.
So as you guys are building a song from its bones, what's your process of creating a new piece?
It's really weird because we don't really have a formula for how we do things. I wish I could say we had a pattern from what we worked with. We don't have any kind of boilerplate or anything. It's just like, hey, I had an idea for a storyline. Cool, let's run with it. And then maybe the music comes in, or they'll come over and we'll get together and listen to this riff. Oh, that's cool. Or sometimes we get in a room and we talk for 2 hours, and like, let's do this again tomorrow, because we're just not feeling it. So everything's very organic with us. There are some times we'll hear a song and we'll say stuff like, we need a song like that, with a feel like that. And so if we like a beat to a song, we're like, hey, let's do that, but let's change the kick pattern a little bit, and it's not like because we don't want anything, we don't want anything that we, to sound like our influence. I mean, our influences are gonna come out regardless, but it's just really weird. We've always, for almost 40 years, we've been working like this and just do not have a set formula on how we write.
Really?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's very little to add to that. I mean, there's been a lot of stuff that's happened with, so what's on your mind? What do you feel like writing about? Let's have a conversation, and that conversation could go anywhere. And when you walk into the room thinking that you're gonna be doing, often turns completely the opposite within the first half an hour of sitting there. And there's also times like, this happened with the last record, where I was staying at this house and I had this riff that I had been playing forever, and I was warming up and just jamming in the bedroom on an acoustic guitar, and 2 hours later we go into a studio, we sit down, I go, Alan, what do you feel like working on? He goes, that riff that you've been playing for 10 years? And I'm like, oh, okay, because I had the riff and that was it. That's as far as I got with it, and I was stymied by it. And then all of a sudden, we took one day and we dedicated ourselves to it, and it turned into this really, really cool, dramatic song that I didn't even know that we had in us until we finished it.
Wow, so questions from anyone?
I'm curious, what was it like early days, like when you guys were starting out and like hustling to get a sign by a label, and there was so much competition and the whole like genre was really starting to bubble. Like, what was that like? Like, can you talk a little bit about that?
Hustle is the perfect word, because then Snake and I would go, it would be either blistering, we'd go to New York because we grew up in New Jersey, so that's where we'd go. And either we'd take my car with the broken passenger seat, or we'd get on a bus and we'd have, a bag full of cassettes. Sometimes we had meetings that were scheduled. Sometimes we just took a chance and sat, hey, is so-and-so here? And we would sit in the waiting room, sometimes for hours. And sometimes just end up leaving the cassette with the front desk, which probably got shit canned, but who knows? But that's what we used to do. It would be the blistering heat, or just so cold, but it was all worth it. And that's what we used to do. Like almost every single weekend that we demo some songs, we'd write some songs and demo it, and then Snake and I would go straight to New York City and just bug the living shit out of people. And here it is. This is our band.
And we'd lie. We would lie about people that we knew.
Yeah.
We would drop names. We would sit there and fabricate stories, and
Would never work today.
we would embellish.
Yeah.
But we would. I shouldn't say lie. We would fib, and we would embellish on the
Embellish,
truth.
that's the perfect word. Yeah.
And because it was a hustle, and there was no social media, so you weren't getting any traction through. There was nothing. I mean, you traded tapes in the underground. That's what a lot of people did, and that's where a lot of people would, find out about your band or whatever. And what we did was, we were also relentless in playing live. We were relentless. We played everywhere that we possibly could, and we built a really strong following in New York and New Jersey, and to a certain degree, parts of Pennsylvania too. And that was really, really essential for, that you build a sort of loyalty through doing that. And there was so many great places to play back then, like great rock clubs. And we had like a really good advantage in that, and a lot of great bands, a lot of cover bands, but a lot of great bands that would go out and you could open for on a Monday night, and there would be people there, man. It wasn't empty. It was a different day and age, but it was great. Like, it was exciting. We were broke. We didn't have 2 pennies between us, but we were certainly not unhappy. We were really, really like ambitious and very, very driven. And that was one of the things when we were putting the band together, was that we needed to make sure that everybody had the same ambition and the same drive as we did.
Yeah, one of the first things when I met Snake, I hadn't heard a note of music he wrote. I just knew him from a cover band from years and years before that. But I was like, man, I love this guy's work ethic. Like, first of all, he's taking 2 buses to work just to keep his long hair, so he didn't have to cut it off up his hair. And I'm like, that's fucking cool, But when we had the same work ethic, so it was kind of, I knew we were on a collision course with some sort of success at some point.
So when you signed, what was that like when you actually put your signatures on those contracts?
It was pretty wild.
Actually, that's a 2-part story.
Yeah, because it was wild. At this point, we had Doc McGee was our manager, and John and Richie were big helps of ours. But it's pretty funny because we were signed to Geffen Records for about 15 minutes. And my dad goes, hey, here's $50. Go get a bottle of champagne so we could celebrate, because we used to rehearse in my parents' garage, so we wanted the band and my parents to have champagne, so he gives me $50, and Snake and I go and buy, what did we buy, like 10 $5
Yeah.
bottles of champagne. We're like, right on. My dad's like, you brought home a bunch of shit.
Yeah, that's true. That's all we knew.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and then we, in the 11th hour, Atlantic came through.
No, we had, it was crazy. Doc McGee called us at Rachel's parents' house when we were rehearsing and said, "Congratulations, you guys are signed." And we had showcased for Geffen Records at SIR in New York City, but Atlantic Records had been going to see us everywhere. And they're a New York-based label, and the Stones, Aretha Franklin, Led Zeppelin. So it was one of those things
that was a label we wanted.
Yeah, we wanted to be on Atlantic. And Geffen, as great of a label as they are, I think that they kind of interpreted us or wanted us to be Bon Jovi Jr. And we played them 19 songs, I believe, at the showcase. And they felt that we had 2 good ones. And one of them didn't even make the record.
Yeah.
And so it just felt wrong. They were like, "Where do you rehearse at?" We're like, "Rachel's parents' garage in Toms River, New Jersey." And the A&R guy is like, "Yeah, well, you'll never see us down there." We're like, "Awesome."
That's great. When Atlantic had been there about 50 times
Yeah.
at this point.
They were invested.
And
Yeah.
so then we get the phone call, and Doc says, "You're signing Geffen Records."
You never saw 5 faces go.
I know, because you wait
Okay.
for that moment.
Yeah.
Your whole, life that you're playing music, you wait for that moment that you're actually getting signed. Like, holy shit, I can quit our day job now. Like I don't have to. I can actually be a musician for a living. And so, hung up the phone. We're all sitting there, and there's this feeling, just this black cloud that
We're supposed to be happy, right?
yeah. And so we did. We went through the whole thing with the champagne and stuff like that, and then we go, "Man, this doesn't feel right. Let's call Doc back."
Uh-huh.
So we called Doc back, and we're like, "Dude, I mean, I know this is gonna sound crazy, but we're like, we don't think this is right. This doesn't feel right. It feels more like they're doing you a favor because you're Doc McGee. It's not like they give a shit about Skid Row. They've got Whitesnake, they've got Guns N' Roses. They don't give a shit about Skid Row." And so he goes, "Okay, let me see what I can do." And sure enough, Doc McGee being Doc McGee, goes to California, gets in a room with Ahmet Ertegun, who owned Atlantic Records, and started Atlantic Records, and said to him, "You still interested in Skid Row?" And Ahmet goes, "What do I have to do?" And Doc goes, "Geffen's got it right now." And Ahmet just goes, "Don't worry about David, I'll take care of David Geffen." And Doc goes, "Okay, what are you putting on the table?" And so he gave us an excellent deal for a brand new band. Gave us a great deal. And he did what he said he was going to do. He's an old school record guy, and he talked to David Geffen and said, "I'll give you something, you let us have Skid Row."
And
we ended up there.
And there were 2 words that Atlantic said to us that Snake and I were like, "We need to be here," and that was creative freedom.
Yeah.
So we were like, this is where we need to be. Because man, when we met with this producer and the A&R guy from Geffen, like Snake said, cut. Didn't like Youth Gone Wild. Didn't like I Remember You. Didn't like. I think the only 2 songs he liked that actually made an album are Making a Mess and 18 in Life, right?
Well, if I remember, and you may be right, I thought they liked 18 in Life and Forever didn't make the record.
Right.
And they tried to make some changes to 18 in Life at that place too,
Yeah,
that Bob
yeah.
Rose was his name.
Yeah. And but he wanted us to, if I remember correctly, Making a Mess, but slow.
Yes.
He goes, "I want it to be like Swamp Rock," and we're like, Swamp
What?
Rock?
That's
What?
right.
I'm
That's
from
right.
New
I
Jersey.
remember.
What? Yeah, there's swamps in New Jersey. That's where the mafia dumped their bodies.
Yeah, Swamp right by the Meadowlands.
Yeah. What the hell is Swamp Rock?
Jimmy Hoffa.
So we all left that showcase. Like, what just happened to all of our songs? Didn't like any of them.
But it was, it turned out the way it should have turned
Yeah.
out.
So when you finally completed the first record, The Atlantic, what was that like? How did you celebrate? Did you buy your $50 worth of cheap champagne again?
Probably.
Yeah.
Well, when that album came out was the first day of the Bon Jovi tour, right?
Yep.
And no one really knew us, but they kind of knew us. Like it's my wife. They kind of knew us, but just from John talking about us, from John Bon Jovi talking about us. Like it was in Texas, in Dallas, right?
Yep.
Reunion Arena,
Yep.
so no one knew us outside of the tri-state area. But it was cool, man. We went on stage, and there was a respectable amount of people there, kind of like now. No.
This is not your fault. No one knew.
No, it's all
We
good.
didn't have time to promote.
No, it's all good.
Hey, thanks.
So,
Sorry.
so
I
yeah.
got it.
So yeah, it was cool, and we came out, and you know, there was a lot of people liked us, but man, as soon as the record came out, and then the video came out, by the time we got, because we started in Dallas, and we kind of went through the South, by the time we got to Fort Lauderdale, it was insane, because Youth Gone Wild was all over MTV, and we did a show with Bon Jovi, but then we played Summers on the Beach, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
yeah.
And it was like that place fit 100 people maybe, and there was a lot more than 100 people in there, and
It was a
just like,
box.
it was pretty cool. And then just everything just seemed to happen to someone else. It was like watching on TV. It was really weird.
We were all stuck in a tour bus too,
Yeah.
and so we were on a pretty heavy schedule. Like there was a time, it was kind of like a punk rock schedule where we'd do like 28 shows in 31 days, and there was a point there where we'd do 2-a-days as well. And so it was, but I mean, to us, we weren't seeing a dime, we weren't seeing anything. We were just jamming.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the year, for me anyway, was when it clicked that this thing had actually taken off. Was I went to go Christmas shopping in the East Brunswick Square Mall in New Jersey, and all of a sudden, and after about 15 minutes, I'm surrounded by about 300 people, and it was like, holy shit, these people know who I am. This is messed up. And security had to get me out of there, and I was like, oh my God, this is really happening. Like this is, like people know who Skid Row is. Like, cause it just, again, you got 12 people on a 40-foot tour bus for a year, and you just have no reference point. You know your video's being played. We were really, really on top of radio stations playing our music and MTV playing it, and we were really aware, but it just didn't click because you're still wearing ripped up jeans and eating tuna fish sandwiches, you know?
Being East Coast guys, how was there ever any like rivalry with West Coast guys? How does LA bands treat y'all?
It was cool. There was really no rivalry. We just knew we were better. Nah, just kidding. There was a lot of really cool bands that came out of LA that we liked, but it was such a completely different scene because it was like you'd flyer and then you'd pay to play, where we were just like, we didn't really do that. You know what I mean? We just spread the word. We're playing here and word of mouth. And I gotta say, the venues back then, the rock venues, did a good job at promoting shows, whether it was just in-house or in what, there was a paper called the Aquarian and another one called the EC Rocker that they would take out big ads. So, you know, and then the good bands would thrive and the lesser bands wouldn't, and that's just how it was. But there was really no competition because it was two different worlds, you know.
And there was never a question in our minds about, a lot of bands wanted to go out to LA because they felt like that was the holy grail for a hard rock band to go out, and that's where you had to be. And we were like, fuck that, man. Jersey and New York City, man.
Yeah, it's like we have New York right there.
Right there.
We can see it from our house. We're not gonna go all the way out there, and it just ended up working better for us.
Yeah, and ironically, we became really good friends with a lot of the LA bands.
Yeah.
I think a lot of this stuff of rivalries or whatever was more a myth than anything, because all the guys in the bands that we ended up meeting, becoming friends with, and also touring with, we're still friends with. And there was never, we just respected each other's, music, and everybody was really cool. There wasn't any animosity, but we were, that being said, we were very proud to be where we were from, and we wore it on our sleeves.
You haven't?
With all the years you've done music, I'm assuming you've had a lot of music that wasn't released. Is there any that you'd love to see released today? Do a compilation album or anything like that?
You know what's really funny is we don't have a lot of leftover stuff. There's a few songs here and there, but I don't know if we release some of that really old stuff, but it would probably be cool for a collectible for a fan. But we're very protective of our brand, so we have this thing in our head where if it doesn't make the album once, it's not gonna make it twice, the second album or third album. Sometimes we'll go and we'll pull pieces out of songs that we have and then write around a riff or an idea or a title. But yeah, songs as a whole, if it doesn't make an album, we just kind of forget about it. But we do have a few songs from back in the day, but I doubt it will ever make the light of day.
Yeah, I mean, from a songwriting standpoint, at least from our songwriting standpoint, we always like to feel, whether it's true or not, but we like to feel that we're evolving, with every release in one way or another. And so to kind of go back and listen to some of that stuff sometimes it's a bit difficult. It definitely shows our adolescence.
Cringeworthy.
Yeah. But what's wild, and I understand that question because, you like the Van Halen guys, Eddie would have these riffs and stuff like that were leftovers from the first record, that some of them made it to Van Halen 2, and even some of it made it to Fair Warning. And I listen to those riffs and go, oh my God, what I would give to be able to have written those riffs. And so, but he's an icon and an incredibly exceptional talent, and we're not.
So thinking about, sorry to interrupt, but I'm just thinking thinking about the music business back in say 1994 till where we are now in 2024, right? So I'm just thinking advice you could give to a 20-year-old guitar player who's wants to be in a band and wants to be just thinking about what you see now versus the way, just the thought of Ahmet Ertegun sitting in his office in New York with a cigar and a stack of tapes and
Right.
and being I'm gonna sign these guys versus
Well, we were always true to ourselves. We only did stuff that we liked for ourselves. So it's so much, the business as a whole is completely different than it was. Back then there was no social media, you couldn't do this. Everything wasn't so instantaneous, you know what I mean? The thing I like to tell people as far as songwriting goes, you're gonna write 50 songs probably that stink. And then you're gonna write that one that you're like, whoa, this is magic. And people are like, oh yeah, I love that song, I love that song. And then all of a sudden those songs start coming more often. And the whole thing is to keep putting in the time. And songwriting is like a muscle. You have to keep doing it, and then you'll learn from other people. I just turned 60 and I still learn when I write with people. I lived in Nashville for 9 years and I'd go write with people, and it wasn't always rock. And I'd see I'm like, man, how did he come up with the idea that quick? And it's just because that's what they do every single day. I'm not saying I liked a lot of the stuff I wrote there because it was on the country side of things, but I learned from craftsmen that do this every single day. And that's the most important part, is just to learn from other people, I think. And then when you write, you have to be true to yourself. You can't just, I'm gonna write a song like Nirvana, or I'm gonna write a song like this guy. Yeah, you could do that, but just do your own thing, and eventually it becomes your own style. Eventually it becomes something that other people like, a style that, like Tom Hamilton gave us advice one time from Aerosmith. He goes, you have to write songs that you like first. And that resonated with me. That was in '89 he said that. And that resonated from that day and kind of changed my whole way of thinking.
Wow.
I started doing something sort of fairly recently that I used to do back in the day when I first started playing, was learn. Well, yeah, but I started figuring out songs again and learning songs that I love that maybe I hadn't ever known how to play, because the chord progressions were intriguing to me, and so on and so forth. And now the resources that are available to any sort of musician, guitar player, bass player, singer, whatever, is incredible. Like I'm blown away that you could go on YouTube and learn, Revelation Mother Earth from Randy Rhoads, Ozzy Osbourne. And back in the day, I had to put a matchbook underneath the turntable to slow it down to figure out those notes. So the resources are there now, which is great. So I can go and say I love this Beatles song, and the chord progression is just absolutely beautiful. Now I can just, have the resources available. But Rachel touched on something very, very important, is that songwriting has to be a selfish act. It has to be something that you do for yourself, because if you don't, then it's not genuine and it's not authentic. And any of the great artists that have gone through, the history of hard rock or whatever, pop, those songs were always written with their own personal intention first. And then you hope that you are creative enough to construct that idea in a way that's appealing to an audience. But it's, first and foremost, it's gotta be selfish. And so that's the way we always looked at it. We always, and I think it was, we kind of unconsciously did that. Like we just sat there, what do you wanna write about today? And it was never about trying to copy somebody, but of course we had influences, and that's another great thing about the resources that are available today. It's like you find your influences, what appeals to you, what you love, and you steal that, and you take that, and then you interpret it in your own way and make it yours. That's the way it's always been. It's just that it's more accessible now. And I still think, like, I see 8-year-old kids doing stuff on guitar that's never been done before. And they're doing 10-finger tapping and finger picking and smacking the acoustic and all this stuff. And I just go, man, that's great. Like, that's really impressive. But can you write a song? And at the end of the day, it comes down to the song.
Okay, so rapid question for our send you guys on your way. So of all your whole discography, which album would you recommend to someone who's never heard your music before and wants to get acquainted? Like, which one would you recommend?
Well, there's been a few different eras of Skid Row. I would say our debut album pretty much defined us, and then our most recent album, Gang's All Here. To me, I would pick those two records. We had a few records. Actually, Thick Skin was another one. That was in the Johnny era, and I'm really proud of that album. That's really good.
To me, Slave to the Grind, our second record, and the last record that we did, The Gang's All Here, there's sentimental favorites for me, but I also think that they show, those two records show all sides of Skid Row.
Well, thank you guys so much
Thank
for
you.
coming out and
Thanks,
playing
guys.
with us. And
Appreciate it.
putting up with me.
Thank you.